Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer Thompson. I have two school-age children, and in February 2024, I was able to share my family's long COVID story at the Central Alberta Teachers Convention. My family developed long COVID after my kids brought COVID home from school. My son, after his first infection, which he luckily recovered from, then the rest of my family when my daughter got COVID a year later. Before we get into Module 2, I'd like you to think about the professional development you've had the opportunity to take in the past. As educators, you've probably taken training on ADHD, ODD, and dyslexia. This training helps you to work with students facing these challenges. Next, I want you to think about the professional development you've taken on post-viral and chronic illnesses. Would you be able to identify these students in your classroom? Do you know what dysautonomia, chronic fatigue syndrome, MCAS, PANS, PANDAS, or long COVID are? These illnesses are most often invisible, making them harder to identify. These illnesses are also more common than we realize, contributing to the diverse classroom environment educators teach in today. You've likely taught students or worked with other educators with one or more of these illnesses in the past without even realizing it. In modules 3 to 5, Angela and Kara are going to focus on how to identify these illnesses in the classroom and how to support these students at school. All students deserve the support needed to be successful in school, whether they are neurodivergent, have a learning disability, or a mobility impairment, or a chronic illness. So, first, I'm going to share my family's long COVID story, and then play a short clip from a documentary called My Kid Is Not Crazy. Then I'm going to talk about what parents and students want teachers to know. This picture is a picture of my family. All of us have different post-viral symptoms from our COVID infections. My husband's worst symptom is a hard-to-treat full-body rash. He went through numerous medications over a year before we finally found one that worked. My worst symptoms are nearly daily migraines, cognitive dysfunction, and dizziness. Over the last 2 years, I've often had to lay in bed in a quiet, dark room with a migraine. Other times, I've been so dizzy when sitting up, I couldn't even focus enough to have a one-on-one conversation. But you can't see this when you look at me, can you? This is the same for your students. Their illnesses are mostly invisible, but it doesn't mean they aren't real. Next, my son. My son in grade 2 at the time got COVID in a class outbreak during a back-to-school COVID wave in fall 2021. His acute illness was short and didn't seem like much more than a typical cold. But what followed wasn't normal. He was sick a lot that school year. Seemed like every second week he was puking or had diarrhea. He missed more than 30 school days that year. For most of the school year, he slept 12 hours a day, and when he would get home from school, he had no energy to play, so he would lay on the couch until bedtime. When we would go to the park on weekends, he got tired quickly and would lay on a park bench until we left. For my son, though, the worst part was his altered sense of smell and taste. At meals, he often only ate a few bites. He would say his favorite foods tasted different, funny, or bad. Sometimes he couldn't smell at all, and other times smells bothered him so much he had to eat alone in his room. This had a huge effect on his eating, so we had to work with a dietitian for a year to make sure he maintained his weight. Luckily, after about a year, he mostly recovered. Next, my daughter. A little over a year later, when she was in grade 1, she brought COVID home from school. This was November 2022. Public health updates had stopped earlier in the year, leaving most people to believe COVID had disappeared. This myth persists to this day. The result? People don't test, they assume it's a cold, then they send their sick kid to school. This don't ask, don't tell policy leaves all our children at risk, especially the most vulnerable. My daughter's acute infection was like a cold too. She was better after a few days. But a few weeks later, she developed PANS, Pediatric Acute Onset Neuropsychiatric Syndrome. She had a rapid change in behavior. Her worst symptoms: OCD, restrictive eating, child hoarding, rages, and meltdowns. She even briefly developed suicidal thoughts. I'm going to pause here and play a short clip from a Pandas documentary called My Kid Is Not Crazy.
I suppose there are some people who think new ideas are ugly because they're threatening. I never wanted, nor could I have ever imagined, that I would be at the center of a controversy because we just were doing our job. Kids are not supposed to be perfectly healthy one day and then completely tormented and very psychiatrically ill the next.
She recognized that you can have obsessive compulsive features that come on following an infection.
It's probably very foreign to neurologists and to psychiatrists and to many people to even think about autoantibodies as causing a mental disorder.
He was a completely different kid. It was looking at a different kid in the same body. There was no way that they could conceive of the possibility that he was not like that 2 weeks ago.
Doctors linked Maury's obsessive-compulsive behavior to a common ailment in children, strep throat. The likely relationship has been coined PANDAS. We repeated the experiments over and over again, demonstrating this connection between the strep and the OCD. Probably the most effective of those experiments was using antibiotics to keep the children from getting strep and showing that that kept them from getting their OCD and tics back.
Anytime a new idea is propagated, there is an opposition to that idea because it takes people out of their comfort zone.
It is controversial. The concept got out of control. Every child who had no onset of tics was getting a course of antibiotics.
And I don't really believe that antibiotics help OCD.
Why is half of this medical community so against this research?
We don't really know as much as we should, and to some extent the public awareness has sort of moved ahead of the science.
The main problems with this illness is that parents are in charge.
We're not qualified. We're not qualified to make the types of decisions.
There isn't enough money for research, especially when we're talking about interventions that are not supported by big pharma.
It shouldn't be this way. This experience has really shown me that our medical system is just so broken. It's just so broken.
One of the things that really sucks, so sucks, because you're so fucking tired every day to read papers and understand stuff and talk to fucking doctors and say, listen, figure this out. I'm too fucking tired to read this shit and explain it to you. Just do something for my kid, Just do something for her.
I think the kids that are being missed, it's a staggering number. Staggering.
I was one of those parents. I relate to all of them, but especially that dad in the second last scene. The one desperate for the medical community to do something for his daughter. This is what parents are going through. Our children are very sick, and we're mostly alone. Back to my daughter. Imagine your child fine when they go to school in the morning, but when they come home later that same day, they're distraught. They've emptied the entire contents of your garbage and hid them all over the house. They're crying and screaming that you threw out their friends and hurt their feelings. I didn't know what was happening. My daughter had never said anything like this before. It was scary, and she seemed terrified. She wasn't joking. She really believed the garbage was alive and had feelings. Later that week, I thought she was having fun singing a song over and over. Then, after about an hour, she became frantic and started crying. She wanted to stop, but didn't know how. She told me her brain wouldn't let her. She developed other OCD routines too. Like, she became fixated on the punctuation in books and had to say period, question mark, or exclamation point at the end of every sentence. If she missed one, she would have to start the page over again. Or licking each finger after every bite of food. If she realized she forgot a finger, she would spit the food out and start over. She needed a lot of reassurance during this time. But this ended up creating an OCD routine at bedtime where she couldn't stop hugging us over and over. These routines became longer and longer. Soon, they were controlling her and affecting the entire family. She would switch frantically from thing to thing, her toys, crafts, dress up, and even her tablet. She couldn't focus on anything. At the worst of it, she stopped eating all but a few bites of food a day because she had a fear of choking. She had a lot of smoothies during this time because we could hardly get any solid food into her. She would chew food, storing it in her cheeks, afraid to swallow. After a few weeks, I started finding chewed up food behind the chairs in our living room. There was a time when I wasn't sure if we could get her eating under control and that she might end up needing a feeding tube. She wouldn't change her clothes or brush her hair for days on end. At one time, this included her full snowsuit and winter boots. I was concerned the school would phone Child Protective Services on us. This might sound paranoid, but children with PANS have been taken away from their parents, both in Canada and the UK. Once, it even led to a father's suicide. She would be in fits for hours, screaming, hitting, and kicking me, trying to escape the house, yelling we didn't love her anymore and that she wanted to die. My son would hide in his room during these rages. He still doesn't like to talk about it, and I worry about what he was feeling when this was happening. He would ask me questions like, will my sister be like this forever? Why won't our family wear masks? Don't they care about what happened to me and my sister? My son has a hard time understanding why the adults around him are pretending his whole family didn't get sick after their COVID infections. He knows simple steps like staying home when sick, cleaning the air, and wearing a respirator mask can protect both him and his friends. He's upset that the adults in his life won't do this. We were lucky to find both a pediatrician who had treated PANS and a child psychologist who had treated post-COVID psychiatric issues before. My daughter got the medication she needed to stop her immune system from attacking her brain instead of the infection. Once this was under control enough, we were able to develop the tools we needed to deal with the OCD, eating issues, and rages. The hardest part of this was that most people in our lives didn't believe how sick our daughter was. As a result, we got little support, even at school. Children suppress their symptoms when they're not at home because they don't want to seem different. Then, when they get home, they break down. We need to address this. It's not just about functioning at school. It's about their whole quality of life. I wrote a 2-part blog about both mine and my kids' long COVID experience. You can read them on the Protect BC website. While preparing for this presentation, I asked parents in 2 of the long COVID kids support groups I'm in what they and their kids wanted teachers to know. These kids want to be at school. They feel left out, forgotten, ignored, and disbelieved. What parents want teachers to know. I'm going to read a few of the quotes from the parents. My child is not being lazy, they are sick. You can't always see how sick my child is because they are at school on their best days and resting at home on their worst days. There is always pain, stomach, head, throat, joints. My child isn't being overdramatic about their pain. Every day and hour looks different symptom-wise. They may go downhill very suddenly. It's hard for my child to manage their energy at school because they don't want to miss out on anything. My child may not always be able to describe what is going on. The littlest things are causing meltdowns now. School absences are necessary to be able to attend and function on other days. School absences may be necessary so my child has enough energy for other activities. Their life needs to include more than rest, sleep, eat, and academics. They need to be able to have some joy in their life too. Please don't seat my child beside someone who is visibly sick. Any illness is a risk for my child and can affect their already limited baseline. Please help my child the best you can. They are sick. Helping these children doesn't have to be difficult. Small changes can add up to make a big difference in their quality of life. Ask yourself, what can you do today? It could be something as simple as letting a student with light sensitivity wear sunglasses in class, or having a footrest available so legs can be up. Having a buddy system for each class for when the child misses class or can't remember something from the day before. Letting a student with POTS use built-in reminders on their smartwatch or phone to hydrate and eat. Allowing a student with an energy-limiting illness the use of a rolling backpack or book trolley when going between classes so they can preserve energy for learning and socializing. allowing a student with an energy-limiting illness to keep their books in a bin on their desk for easy access so they can preserve energy for learning and socializing. Providing a copy of lesson notes the day before for a student whose illness affects their ability to multitask. Allowing the use of a calculator for a student whose illness affects their processing speed. Allow access to a hot water bottle and ice pack for a student who suffers from stomach pain or muscle and joint pain. If they still don't feel well, allow them to go home to rest. What students want teachers to know. I need my teachers to believe my pain is real. I want to hang out with my friends, but school makes me too tired. I can't remember things like I used to. It's too loud in class. I need my headphones. Everything is too loud. Standing makes me dizzy. I'm in pain all the time. Being sick all the time is scary. I worry that getting sick again will make it worse. Please believe me. I am sick. I want to read books about kids like me. Reading books about emotions or with characters who have a chronic illness can help students to feel included in class. These children often don't see themselves in books being read in class, and this can also be a good way for their peers to relate to them too. If you have a student that masks in your class, reading books about masking can normalize mask wearing and nip any bullying in the bud before it starts. One of my family's favorite books is Sticky Brains. This book is excellent for elementary age kids who are having problems focusing only on the negative. Children with ADHD, OCD, and PANS can all relate to this book. I want to see art about kids like me. Just like books, art can be a powerful tool to help students to feel included in class and to help their peers understand what they are going through. On this slide, I have included a few websites where you can find art about post-viral and chronic illnesses to discuss in class. I want to point out the Long COVID Art Gallery. This was presented at the Second Canadian Symposium on Long COVID in September 2024. My daughter was so excited to submit an art piece for this. It made her feel seen and believed. I encourage you to check out all of these websites and others to help you get a better understanding of what people living with post-viral and chronic illnesses are going through. What can educators do? They can listen to and believe their students when they tell them they don't feel well. They can learn about chronic and post-viral illnesses. In modules 3 and 4, Kara and Angela are going to cover a variety of chronic and post-viral illnesses. They can support the student with accommodations. In module 5, Kara is going to go over numerous accommodations. Wrap up. Please ensure the classroom is accessible for all. This starts by accepting that diverse learners require different accommodations. I would also like to note that many of the accommodations included in Module 5 are already being used in classrooms today. This table shows the range of diverse learners and the different accommodations that can support them in the classroom. Some examples. Both neurodivergent thinkers and children with chronic illnesses may need noise-canceling headphones. A child with a learning disability or a chronic illness may need extra time to complete assignments. Children with a mobility impairment or a chronic illness may need more time to walk to the next class or need a friend to help carry their books. Children with a visual impairment or whose chronic illness symptoms, like migraines, get worse with exertion, may need written-to-read apps or devices. Children with ADHD or whose chronic illness affects their processing speed and the ability to concentrate may need read-to-write apps or devices so they can focus their energy on communication. We really want to make it clear that you don't have to reinvent the wheel to support these students. As a teacher, you already have lots of these ideas or items at your disposal. It's just about thinking, how can I incorporate what I already do for other students to support students with chronic and post-viral illnesses? This table is available on the Let's Clear the Air Alberta website if you would like to read it in more detail. Thank you for listening to me today. I hope you take the time to watch the other modules in this video series.